just now this Indian variant of this COVID-19 came across, devastating the world. But the Indians said, look, don't call it Indian variant, call it Delta variant. Well, quite right, because why should any virus be associated with any nation? Similarly, why should terrorism be associated with any religion? No religion would promote terrorism. I mean, really. So, after 9/11, connecting Islam and terrorism, and then saying radical Islam, as if there's some radical Islam which promotes terrorism. There is only one Islam, and that is of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. In Muslim communities, like every human community, they are moderates, they are radicals, they are liberals. I mean, if I first went to Britain, when I first went there, there were these guys called skinheads. They would beat up people who was a backie. They would beat them up. Imagine if I looked upon the British societies through what the skinheads were doing. You can't define a religion or a human community by just concentrating on their extremes. So these people are like, we have our fanatics, like the gunman who walks into New Zealand walks and shoots down 50 worshippers. So when you say radical Islam, so for the man in the street in the West, how is he going to distinguish between a moderate Muslim or radical Muslim? How does he distinguish? So all Muslims become a target. This is what Islamophobia is. After 9/11, any incident happened, because I would spend more time in Britain because my children were young, so I would go and see them. And it was like the whole, people would pray when some terrorist attack took place. Immediately the Muslims would pray, I hope it's not a Muslim, because everyone got branded. After 9/11, I never forget, this journalist called me up and he said, aren't you ashamed of being a Muslim? 1.3 billion people responsible for 19 fanatics or terrorists.
I think I'm right in saying that was Martin Bashir who rang you up.
Yes, not the best of the journalists, but he called me up. I was so shocked by it. So this is the problem, what has happened. What is Islamophobia? People do not realize radical Islam, moderate Islam. I mean, in the West, how does a man in the street? So all Muslims then, and especially anyone who has a sort of symbol of Muslimness, like wearing a head cover or beard, by the beards have become quite fashionable now. Yeah, everyone trendy with a beard now. But so they became targets and they got insulted. I'm not talking about people who got beaten up or killed. I'm talking about normal people being abused in the streets in the Western countries just because they look Muslim. So I think it was very unfair. We Muslim leaders should have talked about it, de-linked Islam and terrorism. And secondly, there's this other thing which started with Salman Rushdie. People in the West do not treat religion like we do. They cannot understand the love, respect, reverence we have for our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. People love him more than anything. Respect and love for him is paramount in our religion. I know how religion is treated in the Western countries. When I went, there was this Monty Python's Flying Circus about Jesus Christ, life of Brian. I was so shocked. I had never seen anything like that.
People in the West would say that is a difference between the Muslim world. I've heard them say, and the West, i.e. the West supports free speech and Muslims don't.
But Peter, that's what I'm trying to say. So I know the difference. I know how the West treats religion. But I also know how they live their religion and the place of the Holy Prophet. They can't understand it because of the way. So it was up to us to make them understand. But look, you can write, there's so many interpretations of the life of the Prophet, Western interpretation, no one comments on it. But don't ridiculous him, don't mock him, don't insult him, which is what Salman Rushdie did, and the West didn't realize. But what he said was the most insulting thing for Muslims. It was the most, it is the most degrading thing to the things he said about our Prophet. Therefore, it was a question of we Muslim leaders should have explained to to the West that, look, just like, and I quote this Holocaust, it caused a lot of pain to the Jewish community. So, even interpretations which do not, which are not misinterpretation of Holocaust, I mean, there are countries in Europe where there's a jail sentence for them because it causes pain to them. All I wanted them to understand is no one should be allowed to cause pain to human communities if we have to live in a sort of global village. Therefore, we Muslims must every human community must define what gives them pain. This is what gives us pain. So all you have to do is not mock and ridicule and insult our prophet, but their interpretations. You can write history. I read his historical books all the time by the Western writers about Holy Prophet and their interpretation, which we don't agree with.